You know, in many ways, we're a nation of contradictions. One of them is that we cherish the sense of community that grew out of a small-town American life. But many of us also favor a kind of individualism that's more focused on independence than on communal living. Some seniors have decided that modern life gets in the way of the kind of community that they want, and they're finding what they've been missing in co-housing communities. Let's see what co-housing is all about.
As more seniors consider where and how they want to live in their retirement years, new and innovative ideas are emerging. One option that's becoming popular among active retirees is known as elder co-housing. Co-housing residents live in a community with one another, yet not in a true commune. They keep their financial independence while working together for the common good. Elder Spirit Community in Abingdon, Virginia is a co-housing community that garners enthusiastic reviews from many of its senior residents.
My wife and I made the decision together. We've both been interested in co-housing for some time, and when we learned a little bit about this place, we came up and investigated and found we really liked what they were about.
We all have the same purpose and mission, which is to try and make it possible for people to age in community rather than in an isolated way.
Co-housing communities such as Elder Spirit are intentionally designed to encourage social interaction. In many ways, they're a return to the idea of the traditional neighborhood.
You build around a common house, which becomes the focal of the community, and build a pedestrian path so that between the houses you have a walking path so people come out their front door and they walk to their cars. And it doesn't hurt us to walk, even though we're seniors. And then you get to see each other informally, and it's a lot easier to get to know people and talk to them.
I think it functions a little like small town life used to, where there was an extended family, and so this is rather like an extended family.
While residents own their living quarters, the community shares facilities such as social buildings, a community dining area, office, and vegetable garden.
Everyone has a private home, and they take care of their own expenses, like utilities and so forth, that relate to their lifestyle.
We each pay $150 into a common fund, and that money is used for things like lawn mowing. In the winter it'll be used for snow removal.
All residents share equally in the governing of their community.
We operate by consensus, which means that we come to agreement, because it's important that everybody has a chance to come to agreement on every proposal. And so far, that has worked very well.
I think when you get ripened into a community, that what you really do is you begin to make decisions that are not just for you, but for what's really good for everybody else, and not just what you want.
Serving on committees is a requirement for all Elder Spirit residents. It's just one more way that everyone pitches in.
There's a committee on the environment. There's a care committee that helps people out temporarily when they're ill. There is a landscaping committee that plants all the trees. There's hospitality committees. There's a committee that deals with having monthly potlucks or parties of some kind.
By working together, residents share one another's lives and can provide assistance and security to those in need.
A couple of people have had to be taken to the hospital for some immediate thing, and there was always somebody there to help them do that.
There's also a system that we call the buddy system, where people in adjacent houses are aware of each other's needs, especially in cases of emergency.
Elder Spirit encourages residents not only to help one another, but also to become involved in the larger surrounding community.
The type of people who like this particular thing were people that are almost always in service of some kind before then. They are teachers, they are ministers, they are social workers, they are activists of all kinds.
They do volunteer work, and they also go to the school, the College for Older Adults, for classes, and they participate in political and civil aspects. We work for peace and justice.
Environmental responsibility is another facet of Elder Spirit's approach to co-housing.
We do composting and recycling here. We try to use non-toxic house cleaners and plant stuff so that we're not contributing to the pollution in water and so forth.
Better way to live on land because more people can share a lot less land and get more out of it. And then the cooperation and living together and supporting each other.
Cooperation, responsibility, social interaction, and the feeling of usefulness are key benefits for these seniors. Together, they create the spirit of Elder Spirit. In an often fragmented society, it's not hard to see why the spirit of co-housing is spreading.
Joining me to discuss elder co-housing and what it offers is Neshama Abraham Pace, co-founder of the Elder Co-Housing Network. She is also president of Abraham Pace and Associates Incorporated, a Boulder, Colorado co-housing consulting firm. Welcome to the Daily Apple.
Thank you, Alexis.
Co-housing for the elderly. Explain that to us, please.
Well, it's a new kind of neighborhood that originated first in Denmark and then came to the U.S. about a year ago. So it's very new in this country. It's a form of an intentional neighborhood for people who are 55 and over, where the residents themselves help create it and then manage it after they move in.
So the only thing that I can use as an analogy is a kibbutz, say in Israel, where people live together. It's a community environment. They all give together, and they all reap the benefits in terms of they do work, they the food and everything. Is this the same kind of situation?
Well, it's a very active community. In fact, people say that when they live in co-housing, it actually helps them stay young longer because they're out in the garden. They're making meals together as a group. They're making decisions about how life will be.
Mm-hmm. Is there any concern that they're age segregated, that they're too separated from the rest of the population when they're in that situation?
Well, some people want to be around children, and those people will choose multi-generational co-housing and will love having the interaction with the children. But there's a whole growing segment of people that really, and they may have already had children, and they feel in a sense, I'm done, or they don't want to have plastic toys on the walkways because they might trip, or they want to have...
I can appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm in my late 30s, so, but go ahead.
Or they'll want to have meals that are more leisurely, have a glass of wine while they're preparing the vegetables, and then afterwards just to enjoy being together.
So this is brand new. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are there many of them that have sprung up in the last year?
Well, we have 2 that are completed. One's in Abington, Virginia, on your piece.
Yes.
And the other one is in Davis, California. And they've been living there just a couple of months. And those residents are in their 70s and 80s.
I want to talk a little bit about the design and creation. I thought, in reading about the piece, I thought that was one of the most interesting parts. They actually, do they sit with an architecture and plan it, or how does it work?
Well, when a community is created by the resident,
architect.
they will bring in an architect and they'll bring in a developer. And sometimes it can take years. And what we found is we're trying to help the forming elder co-housing groups to realize that they can bring in their professional help much earlier, so it can take 2 to 3 years instead of 4 to 8. But the residents are very involved. They are actually getting to say, here's where I want to live. I'd like to have some input in my home.
Do you go out and get a group of friends to create this?
Actually, that's often how many of these start. Sometimes they start through their church. There are about 5 groups in the country that are connected to the Unitarian Universalist Church. There's a Catholic group that's formed. It's really, there's one in Davis that the women knew each other for 40 years. They were in a dream group together.
What's a dream group?
They were writing down their dreams, keeping a journal, and they realized at one point, we're really good friends. Why don't we just form a little community together? Why don't we live next to each other?
Oh, so then they go and they buy the land and then they hire the architect, or is there some certification or some parameters around it?
Well, the most efficient way is to actually find a developer who has a site. And then the developer will do all the technical sides of things. They'll get it zoned for multifamily, they'll handle the engineering, they'll make sure the land is feasible. And at that time, while the development piece is happening, the group can focus on just getting to know each other, on making decisions about how people want to live together. How often will meals be? Will they be prepared by the residents? Will there be a chef that lives on site that will also make meals?
But they don't actually live together, correct? They live in separate housing units on the same space of land.
Yes. Everyone owns their own home, and then they are equal owners in the shared land. Both the garden, the common house, which is one of the unique things in co-housing. We create a building that the residents all have a say in designing. So, for example, if someone loves to paint, then they'll have a studio there. If they're into photography, if they're into gardening, whatever their passion is, you can actually shape that common house so it matches what the group wants. If they want a space for meditation, for exercise, if they want to bring in a yoga teacher, So you've got this big building that's usually 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, which has regular classes, meals, book clubs. It becomes a venue for even the greater neighborhood to have people come in and speak and use that space.
It sounds really phenomenal. I'm surprised it's just for older adults, because it seems like a great thing for young people as well to come together and do something like that. Hang on one second, we'll talk more in a minute. It's time for us to take another break. Don't go away. We'll be back shortly to find out more about elder co-housing with Neshama Abraham Pace.
Do you know? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, how many people a day turn 59? Do you know? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, how many people a day turn 59? Answer: B. 10,000. The U.S. Census Bureau claims a person turns 50 every 7 seconds, and 10,000 people turn 59 every day.
We're back to continue our Daily Apple conversation about elder co-housing with Neshama Abraham Pace. She's the co-founder of the Elder Co-Housing Network. So we were talking a little bit before we left about intergenerational, multi-generational housing. Can you explain that?
Well, multi-generational co-housing has been here for about 15 years, and there are about 3,000 elders, both actively, either they've retired or they're semi-retired, living all over this country with children, with adults, with no children. And then about a year ago, the first age-targeted co-housing neighborhoods came into place. And one of the ways they're distinct is there's a real consciousness about how the design of the homes can allow someone to age in place, but age in a community setting.
You know, it sounds to me a little bit like a commune. Is it very different from that?
Well, one of the differences is that in co-housing, you're keeping all your income, so you're owning your home. You know, when you don't share your income, you'll pay a homeowners association dues to manage the neighborhood. But when you pass, your home is sold and your family will take over. Another distinction is that there isn't a hierarchical decision-making process. Everyone makes decisions equally. There isn't a particular leader. So you've got a democratic, very active group of elders who make decisions by consensus and really decide how they want to live together.
Isn't that unusual? Making decisions by consensus, it's a
Yes.
lovely thought. How is that different from like small town, rural America?
Well, it has all the pieces of village life. You know, Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, has said that for about 99% of human civilization, we've lived in little villages and clans. So we're used to living close to each other. Small homes clustered where we know if someone isn't out in the morning, you'll go and check on them.
Sure.
If someone has fallen and broken a hip, you'll go in and bring them a meal.
What a great point, because it helps from the safety security. So the children, the caregivers, must be very excited when their parents do this. Tell me a little bit about the networking. Like if I was a mature adult and I wanted to find out more about something like this, you were saying that the Elder Co-Housing Network can help.
Well, my husband and I started this a couple years ago to champion this kind of co-housing, this kind of intentional neighborhood for elders, because people all over the country are looking for something different. They don't want to be necessarily in an assisted living facility, and they don't want to be alone in their homes. You know, they need the companionship.
Sure.
So,
And the network book that you have helps in what way?
well, the network is a way for people to find others in their part of the country who want to create a neighborhood. It's eldercohousing.org. And we also teach a workshop that developers and builders go to, because one of the places to help this happen is there are more professionals who've got the expertise, who know how to do really good construction and make energy efficient homes.
And elder friendly.
Exactly, one level, so that you've got everything you need. You've got wider doors, no step up entries, the lighting. One of the things, you might know this in your studying of gerontology, is that if someone's in their bedroom and they can see the bathroom, it reduces incontinence by about 50%.
Absolutely, and I just read the most interesting thing where they've now got all these sensors that are around beds, so if you put your feet on the ground, automatically the light goes on in the bathroom.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the homes and the elder housing, the co-housing that's going up, it's probably got some phenomenal technology
Yes,
in it.
the technology has now caught up to the demand for people to stay in their home, age in home, die in their home. But the difference is in a community, you know, you've got the support. So if something does happen, you can stay there, your friends come in, and there have been a number of people who have passed in co-housing, and it's a very moving experience.
How do people fund this when they want to do this together?
Well, individually, The same way that you get a mortgage for a home. We're making them as much as we can mixed income so that people of all income levels.
But how would you do that? If you're saying that you're paying individually, and I have, you know, $100,000 in assets, and you have $1 million in assets, but we want the same amount of land, that doesn't work out so well. So how does equality come into play here?
Well, you know, the best communities are diverse. Age, interest area, politics, and income. Income is a great equalizer, because when you sit together and you make decisions about how you're going to manage the homeowner's budget, and you've got someone who's very wealthy and someone who's not, you pool both positions and you come up with a very strong decision. And in fact, everyone is owning their own home, but they're equal owners in the land. And when you see a community, like the one in Elder Spirit in Abington, Virginia, some of those are market rate and some of those are affordable. But from the outside, you can't tell the difference. And so you want that kind of equalizing. You want the homes outwardly to look the same, even though inside they may be quite different.
Is it a special kind of person that lives in a place like this, though? Because when you talk about that, it seems to me that it's a person that's, I feel a lot of security from that type of person who's comfortable with, you know, living with others that are unlike themselves.
Well, I think that a person who would choose co-housing would first want to know their neighbors. They'd actually want to have that connection on a daily basis. They want to participate in their neighborhood. They're willing to be egalitarian. They may not start off that way. You know,
That's interesting.
You learn how to be in community.
Has it been a tough road for you since you thought of this innovative idea to get people involved?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a tough road, but you know, if you're a pioneer, you got to hang in there. Sometimes it feels like we're running a nonprofit.
Yeah.
But we have been working for about 3 years now, specifically to both help forming groups around the country so they can call us up and get advice. And I can tell you that there are groups in just about every state in this country, as well as the developers. We're really reaching out to far-sighted, environmentally conscious developers who were willing to do an environmentally and energy-efficient community where people are going to drive less because their social life is there, and are willing to design to allow that kind of partnership. One of the things that's unique is that the developer and the resident group form a partnership, and they work together. So it takes a unique kind of developer who's willing to say, okay, I'm going to help this community come into being, let them form their community over a 2 to 3 year period.
Now, if I was a person that wanted to get involved, we talked a little bit about the Elder Co-Housing Network. Are there other options of resources for me to go look for this kind of situation?
Well, at this point, actually, we are the main resource.
How do you plan to market this more heavily in the future so that more resources can be available for people?
Well, we're reaching out to the Urban Land Institute because the New Urbanist developers are already creating a new urban neighborhood, and a co-housing neighborhood fits in beautifully there. You know, any place that you would put a condominium or townhomes. There's the Senior Co-Housing Book, and that's a good resource for people. We're doing workshops that help people know what the development process is, whether they're a landowner and they're saying, you know, what am I going to do with my 3 or 5 acres?
Sure. When you talk about this kind of situation, though, aging in place is a sort of what the terminology that comes to mind for me. If someone is in a co-housing environment and they're aging in place, are you at all concerned, or do you take precautions in terms of making sure that they're near a hospital? What happens if they need assisted living? How do you deal with all of those issues?
Well, Alexis, you look for sites that are more urban. Being near a medical facility is great. We've talked to a number of continuing care retirement communities because those campuses already have health care and they're used to going to people's homes.
Oh, in-home health care, okay.
Exactly. So if you already are near a situation where someone could be at home and if something happened, they can rely quite a bit on their neighbors. But there's a place where neighbors, you know, don't want to necessarily clean someone's body, and that's where the home health care can come in.
So what happens if someone has to move or has to move into a nursing home or something of that nature? Does the association have to allow a new person to move in, or is it word of mouth, or how does it work?
Well, mostly it is actually word of mouth. Most communities keep a waiting list. You know, of the 2 that we have, they both do.
Really?
Yes. You don't often need to advertise because it's a very desirable lifestyle, and it starts now in this country. I mean, this is the beginning of a huge wave of, I think, the general public saying, you know, how are we going to age in a way that's supportive, sustainable, you know, lets us continue to grow.
And be independent.
exactly be stimulated
Sure.
by each other in conversation.
Absolutely. This has been great information. I'm so glad to learn about it.